Hey everybody, how's it going? Since we got a time trial competition featuring the 2021-22, the season 8 Formula E cars in a few hours, I figured I should probably make my way through the new special event, Berlin Formula E event. Um, And for the effort, you get to win a new Formula E car, which it says 2021 season car, or that's yeah. Even though the new cars, I suppose, are 100,000 motorsport dollars more expensive than the prior season. We should probably go by season, I guess. Season 8 cars, and the tuning setup wise, um, in the season 8 the season 7 tuning setups actually are available. So if you want to spare your some of your motorsport dollars, you can make further progress in the season using the prior season tuning setup. Although this one has the maxed out acceleration, which can be very helpful. Acceleration being one of the most expensive tuning setups available, and they're giving us more in that category compared to prior season. And then, of course, victory points do yield some extra bonus, whether it's in the form of extra gold or motorsport dollars or towards the bonus car, the grand prize, right? And currency bonus 50 gold, which you don't have to spend any gold in order to complete this season to win the car. You can just get the motorsport dollar tuning setups to win the car. Of course, in the event, you have to use the new 2022 Formula E. They call it high speed tuning setup. You notice they are decoupling the tuning setup from the circuit it was usually tied with. So, yeah, so that's that, and then 250,000 motorsport dollars. Now, PR requirement, regardless of which team you start with, they have a different base PR. So this season we got 11 teams as opposed to 12, like unlike the past seasons. The base PR varies from the lowest being 57.1 and highest being 57.3. So we got three categories of cars, and within the same PR category, the performance specs are identical. So, in order to complete the event to win the car, you will have to spend exact same amount of motorsport dollars, basically, and that is maxing out. Here, let's go back to the tuning setup screen so we can see it. So you have to max out the gearbox mapping, which is the first category where there are 8 tuning setups available, and power unit optimization, the second category where there are 10 tiers of upgrades. You don't need to get all 10, you just need to get 7. I know. Considering the last 3 are going to be very, very expensive, that's actually worth mentioning. And then third category, brakes calibration. You need to get all 6 steps there. And the final category, there are only 4 steps for suspension adjustment, which deals with the grip. You do also need to get all 4 because they're going to be the cheaper, low tier tuning setups. Obviously, cost less. So that will cost you a total of 2,182,900 motorsport dollars, and you will get 250,000 of it back, which means your net cost is 1,932,900 motorsport dollars. And if you go with, if you're starting from no motorsport dollars spared in your bank, then you would have to do your 250,000 daily motorsport dollar grinder event. Basically, save up for like slightly over a week, like 8 days, to be able to earn enough to be able to afford it, right? Although you're not receiving the full 250,000 motorsport dollar rewards at the beginning. You earn the biggest chunk at the end, which means you probably need to give yourself maybe another day so you can be able to afford it. Although, does somebody actually have 0 motorsport dollars? I mean, that's if you can get it exactly to 0, I would say that's pretty impressive. Anyway, so let's talk about the cars and the teams and what their sort of their specialties are, right? So, 3 categories. PR 57.3 category, which includes Jaguar this year. They didn't used to belong in the top tier teams, but this season, they are. So, welcome, Jag. And then Mercedes EQ, they are always in the top tier. And then DS Techeetah also always generally in the top tier. So this year, 3 teams in that top tier category, sporting the base PR of 57.3. And the top tier teams, their advantage is the top speed of 248 kilometers per hour. So the other teams, the lower tiers, have lower top speed. And electric cars, actually, top speed does matter because these cars do, if given the long enough stretch of the straight, you can reach the top speed, you know. So the question is, like, in Formula E circuits, is there long enough straight to reach that top speed? 248 for these cars, I feel like, they can get there pretty quick. So perhaps it will play a role. I mean, considering that the top tier PR teams actually have that as their, front and center advantage, seems like maybe they do. We'll find out once we start racing these cars. And the second category that these guys excel at, or have the advantage over other teams, is going to be the braking distance, 26.2 meters for the braking distance, which actually happens to be the same advantage the lower PR, the 57.1 PR teams also have, except the 57.1 base PR teams, that's the only advantage that they have, is that they have equal this braking distance as the top tier team, and everything else is kind of more on a baseline without any advantage, right? So in top tier, acceleration 2.97 seconds, which is, slowest out of the 3 categories, which is it going to make a difference? I suppose you can kind of compensate for it if you get all 10 motorsport, the tuning setups and power unit optimization, which will cost you extra like 8 million motors, or not 8 million, 800,000 motorsport dollars. So that's not cheap. That alone will cost you like another 4 days of grinding. So something to consider there. And then the grip wise, it's there are 2 categories. It's going to be either 1.37 for the top tier and the bottom tier teams, and then the mid tier team has the higher PR. So for top tier teams, which includes, as I said, the Mercedes. Where are you? There you are. Mercedes. Got the top tier PR, 57.3. And then Jaguar also has the same spec. And then next to it, DS to Cheetah having the same base spec of the 57.3 PR. All right, and then the second category, I want to call it sort of a balance, or yeah, I don't know. I mean, second category team does seem a bit more attractive in my opinion, just because the two categories that the mid-tier base PR 57.2 excel at seems more relevant, if you will. And what they have there is the quickest acceleration and the highest grip. Now, they do suffer having the slowest top speed, coming in at 243 kilometers per hour. And the team-wise, of course, we got the Porsche, Tag Euler, right? And let's see, who else is in that category? Beamer, where are you? Beamer. Yeah, Avalanche Andretti, Beamer. Also sports the same base PR, the mid-tier 57.2, and then Envision Racing, right? So they also, which is essentially the Audi, by the way, this year. Audi is not doing their own separate team, because in the past, Envision version Racing used the Audi, and the Audi did their own. But this year, or this season, it's going to be Envision using Audi, and that's all the Audis we're going to get, which is fine. Anyway, and then the Rocket Venturi being the last team sporting the mid-tier PR here. And their advantage, yes, is going to be the acceleration of 2.94 seconds compared to 2.96 on the lower tier and 2.97 for the top tier team. So acceleration wise, it is the fastest. Now the top speed, as I said, does suffer from capping off at 243 kilometers per hour, as opposed to bottom tier coming in at 246, or the top tier coming in at 248 kph, right? And the braking distance, it's a little bit longer, 26.5 meters as opposed to 26.2 that is common, that is shared for both top tier and the bottom tier teams. So it takes a little bit longer to brake, but perhaps you be compensated with a higher grip, since this mid-tier teams have a 1.38 G as opposed to 1.37 G that the other category teams share. So, yeah, depending on your racing style, it might play a role. I'm assuming, yes. And finally, the bottom tier teams, which is I suppose least attractive option to start off, just simply because you spend the same amount, but the specs are gonna be lower across the board, more or less, except for the braking distance, which I always kind of feel like is the least important spec for most instances. Maybe for these street circuits it plays a bigger role, but because then I feel like the acceleration needs to be there to kind of compensate. But for the bottom tier teams, which includes the rest, right? Dragon Penske, Neo 333, and Nissan, which has been dropped to the bottom tier this year. Past year, they were the sort of a, top performer, but this year not so much. And Mahindra, right? So those are the four teams that round up this season's the teams, with the last four being the lowest base PR teams 57.1 PR. And in terms of their specs, the top speed is middle of the road, 246, sitting between top tier 248 and the mid tier 243. So these guys, top speed is, all right. Acceleration is also kind of in the middle, a little bit on the slower side, but definitely not as bad as actually the top tier teams. Top tier teams, remember, had a 2.97 seconds. These guys have 2.96 seconds. 1/100th of a second. Does that make a huge difference? Difficult to say, right? I feel like those differences will be easily compensated by, having a better driver. Essentially, your skill probably can override some minor spec differences. But if you can start with a higher spec, why wouldn't you, right? So yeah, but the mid-tier teams do have the 2.94 second acceleration, which seems like now at that point between the top tier 2.97 and then 2.94 point, like 300ths of a second. Perhaps that's a little bit more noticeable. We'll see, because on a daily basis, 300ths of a second, I wouldn't notice, but in these races, perhaps they do. Accumulating over time as you're accelerating, right? Braking distance, the same as it's the better, one of the better teams, right? 26.2 as opposed to 26.5 meters that mid-tier teams sport. And then the grip is on a lower 1.37G, 0.01G lower than the higher, the mid-tier teams, which has 1.38G, right? So with that being said, my guess is just, if you're wondering which team to choose, I would guess the top tier. So either, DS to Cheetah, Jaguar, or Mercedes. Go with one of the three teams. Just seems like, they're giving us, they have the highest spec, and perhaps the fact that they have a significantly, I would think the having 2 kph higher top speed, or depending on who you're comparing it against, sometimes 5 kph top speed advantage over the competition, perhaps is one of the more forgiving factors. So that would be my recommendation, is to go with the if you're wondering, go with the most forgiving car, right? Which is the top tier cars. As I said, DS to Cheetah, Jaguar, or Mercedes. It'll cost you exactly the same. So if you have one car to choose, one of those three would be my choice. So anyway, well, this video is going on long enough, so I will make a separate video for actual playthrough, but at least for now, that will do it for this video. And by the way, if you want to, as I said earlier, if you choose to make some further progress in 2022 season, or the season 8, I guess they call it. What do they call it? Let's have a look. This car is from season 7. Yeah, they kind of have an overlapping, right? The season is not just 2022. It starts at 2021 and kind of goes over to 2022. So that's the way the Formula E seasons are divided in the game. So yeah, in season 8, you actually can use the tuning setups from season 7, oddly enough. So if you maxed out tuning setups from season 7, yeah, you might be able to take advantage of that. So anyway, that will do it for this video. So good luck to you all, and we'll catch you in the next video. All right, take care.